Welcome to Watching the Throne.
A lyrical analysis of Kanye West.
Oh man, my name's Chris Lambert.
My name is Travis Bain, and today, I know I keep saying this, but I actually really do believe it today. Today is day 5 of the Advent calendar, and I think it is the most anticipated day yet.
I can't see why people wouldn't think that this is the pinnacle of the show.
I'm not sure it gets better than this, which is probably not a very good marketing strategy to say, like, maybe the rest of the episodes won't be as good, but this might be a high for the show, period.
I can't wait.
Because today, let me open up the calendar. Oh, look who we got here. A nice Carmelly treat today. We are going to be talking about our top 5 underrated Kanye West songs.
Yeah, just the songs that, to us, we feel don't get enough shine, enough love, for whatever reason. Reasons we will explain, because, believe it or not, we have strong opinions on this.
And I can only assume that the album we're doing the Advent calendar for, Jesus is King, is going to have some underrated songs on it as well.
It's bound to.
It already has underrated songs. Oh, I see what you did there.
I'm a champion.
Are you really? Okay, we're going to find out if any of these songs are actually on the list. Chris, what's your number 5 most underrated Kanye West song?
Okay. So, I just don't think it gets talked about enough given what it is, but it's Why I Love You from Watch the Throne.
I almost picked that one.
Right, we both love this song so much. It's the last track on Watch the Throne, and I feel like collaboration albums don't happen as much as any of us would like them to. Like, do you remember how hyped people were for years for like a J. Cole and Kendrick album? And that was before J. Cole and Kendrick were like as huge as they are now. Now, ever more so, people would be thrilled about that. We had Jay-Z and Kanye West in one of like the highlight times of their career release a joint album. And even though they had verses that followed each other, there was only really one time on the album that the two of them rapped back and forth on the same verse, which is all I was wanting from the album, because that was one of my favorite things that Mos Def and Talib Kweli did on Black Star, was how well and cool it was when they traded bars. So I was so excited for that, and Why I Love You is that. And of course, they saved it for the final track. And just how the song builds, what it gets to with them exchanging verses, it gets me so hyped every single time. And I just feel like people don't really discuss the song as much as I would expect them to, or give it the praise that I would. I guess I just never really see it get brought up when people talk about Watch the Throne. It's always, for good reason, In Paris, like No Church in the Wild, Otis, which are all like very catchy and great songs. But I think Why I Love You is right up there.
Yeah, I imagine one of the big reasons is that Kanye's not even on the song that much, which makes it kind of funny that it's your number 5 most underrated Kanye song. But I get it. I mean, he produces it. He's on there. It feels like a Kanye song, and yeah, I agree. I wish people traded bars more. I think that's one of the reasons I love Run the Jewels, is because they don't like necessarily trade like line for line that much, but they'll do like 3 or 4 lines and then 3 or 4 lines the other guy, and they really build off each other in that way and like construct songs that way. They clearly write songs together, and you just want to see that more.
Yeah. I find it beautiful. Like Kanye talking about that's an assassin for you gets me every time.
Should we release a collaboration album?
Yeah. We can call it like To the Hospital, and it's just the album that sends you to the hospital.
It's a great idea, Chris. My number 5 is from the album Jesus. You want to guess which one it is?
I'm in it.
That was one I considered, but then I kind of started thinking, like, is it underrated? I feel like people really like that song. To me, the most underrated one is Guilt Trip. I think it's the song that a lot of people see as like the real weak point on the album, especially coming out of Blood in the Leaves, because that song is so epic. And Guilt Trip can, by comparison, it can maybe feel a little stilted and not as adventurous, but there's so much going on in that song, sonically, lyrically. I think especially lyrically, because Kanye is so coming out of Blood in the Leaves, where like he's kind of reflecting on this past love he had, to this woman he's with now and like not feeling connected with her, and he's very vulnerable on it. There's just, and I love the sound of the song too. Like it all combines for this very vulnerable depiction of Kanye coming out of Blood in the Leaves, and somebody who just is kind of in this transition period and like figuring out how to move on from this past trauma to like where he wants to be. There's just so much going on in it that I don't think it's enough love.
No, and why that's a good song for this list is because even me as co-host of the show that champions Kanye albums all the time, especially Yeezus, giving birth to the "Did you know Yeezus was a concept album" meme that seems to be going around.
I had that.
I had a period of like a year or two where I skipped Guilt Trip.
Yeah. I get it.
And I finally came out of that and I was like, "Oh my god, this song is doing so much." But I think it really was, as you said, coming out of that high of Blood in the Leaves. I was just like,
You know what? This is a testament to Yeezus, that I think Guilt Trip is one of his most underrated songs and an amazing song. And it still might be the 7th or 8th best song in the album.
Yeah, right?
But it's a great one.
Good choice, Travis.
Thank you. Number 4.
So, I don't know. I feel like it's number 4 because I feel like this is more 50-50. But I think there's part of this song that really is underrated, which is more of what I'm getting at. But Say You Will is my number 4, because when I see people talk about 808s and Heartbreak, I feel most of the time, it's heartless. It's the drama of Pinocchio Story. Even if people don't like Pinocchio Story, they recognize like the emotion of it. Street Lights, Love Lockdown. And I do see people like back and forth on Say You Will, like some that really love it, some that just can't get into how kind of minimalist poetic it is. I've seen a few people express like not liking the lines, "When I grab your neck, I touch your soul," which I always really love that line, but I love the poetry of it. I love the sparseness of it and just how it sets the mood of the album. But the outro, I think, is where this song really shines. And it's always kind of interesting to me because I feel like Kanye fans on a whole tend to really love and admire a lot of extended Kanye outros, looking specifically at, say, Runaway, where there's, memes about if you skip the outro of Runaway, you're a monster, or like you would just listen to the outro of Runaway on repeat over and over again if it was a song by itself. There's so much love for the artistry there, and I feel like the first time Kanye did something like that, really exploring the extended outro as this emotional scape to really hold you in place and capture a feeling, was with the outro on Say You Will. And there's just something that's always been very powerful to me about that that's not discussed enough in terms of his discography or these beautiful moments on 808s and Heartbreak.
Yeah, you can almost understand why people wouldn't appreciate it as much, as just a song. To me, it really thrives as an album opener and kind of as a mission statement for the album, because up to this point in Kanye's career, we're getting College Dropout, Late Frustration. We're in graduation mode with Kanye, where we have songs like Stronger and like Homecoming that are like these big pop, club-oriented epics. And then you get this something that is so minimalistic, and of all the songs on 808, that's probably the most bare bones So I think it was more than anything, it was Kanye saying like, this is what this is. And to that extent, like it almost doesn't really need to be a song like you'd hear on the radio. It's a very experimental artistic expression of what you're about to hear.
But if you're a radio DJ and you play Say You Will, I will listen to your channel for forever.
Agreed. I'll stick with the 808s vibe right here. My number 4, and this should be a surprise to nobody who's a regular listener to the show, See You in My Nightmares.
Oh yeah, you love See You in My Nightmares.
I do. I almost... It's a notably derided Kanye song. I think you'd see it on a lot of people's list of his worst songs. And I just think I think a big part of it is us going song by song through the albums and kind of tracking. There's not really a narrative on 808s and Heartbreak, but there's kind of a general one where we're in different phases of Kanye's life. Like at first, he's disconnected from his sister and the people on the plane. It's more of a general disconnect. Then we get into romance, and then to me the last few songs really kind of expand it and display Kanye lost on a more general level. And I think especially the short film for See You in My Nightmares, what's that song called, or what's that movie called?
We Were Once a Fairy Tale?
Yeah, where the whole video is this song playing in the background at a club and Kanye trying to talk to people and people being kind of annoyed by him and his ego, and not really... It just seems like his career isn't very fulfilling at that point, and that's the vibe I get from See You in My Nightmares. And it's that classic case where the woman he's singing about in the song is really him singing about himself. The woman he always features in his songs is always a reflection of himself and of his career and of the fulfillment he's getting from music and hip hop. And you can really sense, I think maybe more than any song on 808s, you can really sense him being disconnected and not really sure how to make his career as fulfilling as it could possibly be, and feeling lost with his mom out of his life. It's, to me, that song really captures it more strikingly than any other on the album, maybe besides Pinocchio's Story. But as a song, the song's kind of scary and it's grimy, and it just, I don't know, you can sense he's actually scared.
It was when I first started listening to 808s, it was the first song that I was obsessed with on the album. Mm-hmm. More so than Heartless, more so than Love Lockdown. It was See You in My Nightmare that I kept coming back to.
And I like Lil Wayne's part, so fuck you, Jordan.
I think if there's one takeaway from this episode, it's fuck you, Jordan.
Absolutely.
Love you, Jordan.
All right, number 3.
Yeah, so in the vein of most hated Kanye songs, one of us had to do this. I'm sorry if it's your number 1.
Okay. I'll make it my number 3.
Drunken Hot Girls.
Yeah, let's just do this at the same time then, because that would have been on my number 1.
Okay. I mean, the soundscape's, I think, gorgeous.
Yeah, beautiful song.
Yeah. It was still produced by John Bryan, or co-produced by him, the guy that had worked with Fiona Apple and was such an instrumental part of the soundscape refinement on Late Registration. And he comes in and brings just this beautiful aesthetic to the song, which contrasts so heavily with the subject matter. And actually, I get the hate for this song because in 2007, when I was in college, it was I'm going to listen to Kanye West and finally figure out what this dude's all about. Because we were playing Stronger every single time we had people over. And that was kind of the track to kick off the party. And it was just
those raging dorm parties.
Yeah. It was the basement of the fraternity house,
Oh, okay.
But the raging, as much as people raged at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio in the middle of winter. But I remember listening through College Dropout, Late Registration, I was like, these are pretty good. And I got to Graduation, and Drunken Hot Girls came on. I was like, how disgusting. And just decided I didn't like Kanye. And what a fool I was for the next year until 808s came out. But I really thought, I took this as like Kanye's serious opinion on women at the time that I heard it. And I think that some people still do. I'm sure there's somebody listening who's like, everybody gets that it's not him seriously talking about women. It's just like a dumb song. But I do think there are people that are probably like, this guy thinks this way about women. Like that they're just drunken hot girls and like things that he could sleep with and how misogynistic. But the song's like so low-key ironic, especially getting into the second verse where the girl just uses him for a ride and makes him get her food. And then when he gets home, she's sober and doesn't want anything to do with him. Like, that's so funny to me. That it's just showing that, you know, you kind of get taken in because you're going to do anything because you're so desperate for these women, and playing off of each other. Like, I think it's supposed to show how gross his behavior is on the track, which gets into the album as a whole, which I could keep talking about, but you talk.
Well, I think you're getting largely at why I think it works so well. And I think I kind of had the same reason for See You in My Nightmares. The uglier the song is, the more gross it feels, the more it's working, in my opinion. Like, the more disgusting Kanye's character is being, is more and more of, what's the word I'm trying to think of? It's more and more of like revealing of the punishment for him. Like it's really reprimanding him more and more for the life he's chosen to live. Like he has become this bloated celebrity, as opposed to the album starts out with somebody who wants to go out into the world and like do good things and reach more people. And then you get something like Drunken Hot Girls where he's not doing any of that. He's just being gross to people, and he looks at women as objects, and he's materialistic, and he's addicted to sex, and there's no fulfillment anymore for what he's doing. He's not reaching people and touching lives. He's just thinking me, 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 me. You know, he's in Jesus mode, and it's just sad. And it just, to me, gets sadder and sadder until the end when he's stuck with this girl he got pregnant, and all of a sudden, like, the poor decisions he's made has completely ruined his career. Like he's not going to be living the life he thought he was going to live. And I think that is such an incredible indictment of how you can get lost in celebrity, and going even beyond the character itself. Like somebody who it isn't just somebody who was stupid and chose the wrong path and didn't do the most he could of celebrity. It's an indictment of celebrity itself and what it does to people, and all these promises you think it makes to you, and the life you think it forces you to live, when really, like, you can choose any path that you want, but you know, that prospect of becoming a star drives you to these, you know, disgusting depths. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's like the concise way of putting it, right? Like if you listen to Drunken Hot Girls as a song in and of itself and just take everything literally, it comes off much worse than if you look at it in the context of what Kanye's saying on Graduation and the story that he's telling, and how it's a scene in that movie showing how fame has corrupted the Kanye, in quotes, character on the album. And this song, in a way, foreshadows Blood on the Leaves. Just this idea that men and women will take advantage of each other at this level of superficiality.
Totally.
In the club, like the men just want the women for their looks, and the women are using the men for like rides, money, buying them things. And at the end of it, you're kind of compromised. Like all the coke on the table, you can't snort that.
When you can snort it.
That's how you know life's going well.
Yeah, and I just think all that combined with the fact that take everything away you want from the song that you think is ugly, like, and you just listen to the song, it really is a gorgeous, like, probably one of, I might even go as far as to say like the best sounding song on the whole album, and that song is filled with classics. I think a lot of the times people don't even really listen to it sonically because they're so consumed by how gross it sounds. But again, I think, you know, the unappealing parts of the song are what make it work, like what make the sound even work. Like it's supposed to sound kind of scary and depressing, and I don't know, it's all working to me.
Well, it's so beautiful on the album too, because you go from like I Wonder, where he's just like, oh, should I go and pursue my like dreams and aspirations? And he does. Good Life is him going city to city to city, and like he's finding success, and like this is the good life. And then in the wake of that, you get this middle portion of the album that's just increasingly like disgusting, from Can't Tell Me Nothing to Barry Bonds to Drunken Hot Girls to Flashing Lights to Everything I Am, which is just, it's so egotistical and indulgent.
Yeah. And it needs to be at that point for him to eventually be able to look back on himself and say, like, what happened to me? He needs to get to those, he needs to hit those lows to eventually hit the highs we see him do later in his career.
Right. And specifically on Homecoming, when he comes back, like, I've achieved the glory, here I am. And they're just like, nah.
Fuck you.
You've changed. He's like, what? Me? I guess I have, haven't I?
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
All right, number 2.
Yeah. Me, you?
You go ahead.
Okay. Number 2, I have I'm In It.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I agree with this for the record. I just wasn't sure. Because, like, underrated with Kanye can mean so many things.
It's the song, I forget what it was. On Twitter a few days ago, we had some kind of list of things going on, and a bunch of people started piling on I'm In It, just saying that they hated it. And like, Yeezus is great, but I'm In It's bad. And I feel like I see that a lot with like I'm In It or Guilt Trip or Send It Up, kind of being the 3 songs that get the most hate on Yeezus. Mm-hmm. And it's, I guess it makes sense to me in a way, because I'm In It really is all over the place, like structurally.
Yeah.
Like you have Justin Vernon and Assassin, which already is like very contrasting and not quite in the way that Justin Vernon and Chief Keef were. Like that was already kind of jarring, but because they repeat the same lines and it's more melodic, it's different when you have them, how they're being used here. Like, I feel like it's way more jarring. And then you have some of Kanye's crudest lines.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Keep going.
Okay. You have some of Kanye's like crudest lines in the first verse, talking about this girl that he's going to take the bath with, and sweet and sour sauce, right? And then you get into the third verse, and people don't like put my fist in her like a civil rights sign, or just the cruder sexual talk that's part of it. But in terms of Yeezus' story, we just see this guy who is trying to do something for people, right? Like on Black Skinhead, he identified all the racism and unfair points of view that he thinks exists, especially towards black people, and he wants to motivate people to make change in the world, which is what we then see on New Slaves, where he's trying to lead this revolution. But that revolution fails, and now he's left to just indulge in the most superficial and shallow sexual encounters that are just meaningless. And all of his talk about civil rights and rebellion, just down to sexual innuendos. Yeah. So I already love what the song's doing in that way, and contrasting Assassin and Justin Vernon gets at the duality that's present on the album, with Kanye being torn, or the Yeezus character being torn between the persona he puts on and the vulnerability that he feels. And you have Justin Vernon embodying that vulnerability, and Assassin embodying that persona that you show to others of like strength and bravado and ego. So just to have them competing on this song in that way, I I really feel like it captures the fractured psyche of the Yeezus character heading into Blood on the Leaves.
Yeah.
And that stressed out feeling that he carries into it. And then you have the beauty of Justin Vernon saying, like, calling this girl Starfucker, which is such a condemnation that also sets up Blood on the Leaves. And then I think the outro is one of the coolest things that Kanye's done.
Yeah.
Like, that's something else that people should be like, not people should be like, but I'm surprised people aren't saying, like, oh my God, the outro on I'm In It is one of the best things on Yeezus. But they don't.
I mean, just structurally, that whole song, it has so many different parts and moves in so many different ways. And to reach that outro, like, you may call the song chaotic and disorganized, but there's a beauty to building to that outro, because that outro is climactic. Like, it is the end. It is the culmination of everything that track is building to. And for him to just go absolutely fucking ape shit for like a minute there at the end of the song, that's mastery. I'm telling you.
And there's so many, even the lines on that outro have so much like
some of his best imagery,
right? Like, my mind moved like a Tron bike, pop a wheelie on the Zeitgeist.
Ugh, it's beautiful.
And then the Michael Douglas out the car now, referencing to the movie where Michael Douglas like snaps and like murders everybody.
Yeah.
And it's just like the Yeezus character has also felt like he's on this point of snapping.
Yeah, that's probably the best part of it, is that there's so much going into the emotion of that outro. Like, it is both the result of him like failing to start a revolution, like the pains of him not achieving of everything he could of his celebrity, the pains of like never finding a true romantic interest, like somebody that fulfills him. It's all building the Blood on the Leaves, which is super, focused on gender politics and just the social, everything that surrounds you. Like, the song is just about fucking everything. Like, that outro really does lead into that.
Beautiful.
Yeah. My number 2 is I tweeted about this once, actually, and it's probably the most likes I've ever gotten on a tweet, and also the most hate I've ever gotten from a tweet, which is, I guess, usually goes hand in hand. But Freestyle 4 to me is kind of an amazing song, and almost in some ways, like, this is what I get the hate for, kind of a high for Kanye, conceptually, because the song is seemingly what it is. It's only 2 minutes long, and it's just about a dude fucking. Okay. But like, it isn't that, like, that, like, to me, the song is kind of everything to the life of Pablo. It's everything to his journey. This guy who starts out in this sort of chaotic, indulgent, materialistic place where women are objects, and he's not really one with his family. And the album's a slow build to him kind of realizing the error of his ways and wanting to be a better husband and a better father and better to himself, I think, is the most important part. And to me, Freestyle 4 is the culmination of all of that bad behavior. It isn't just sex. It is the culmination of Kanye being lost and being scared and not really sure which direction to go anymore. He's lost himself so much that this really scary music comes in that has this really unwelcoming sound. And it's not like, it's weird because the song isn't necessarily pleasant to listen to, maybe by like a normal song standard, like a radio song, yet like it's kind of beautiful the way it builds. And it does have a really interesting sound, kind of like Drunken Hot Girls. I think you can get lost in what the song itself is saying lyrically, that you don't notice what the song itself is doing. And the song builds and builds and becomes scarier and scarier and more disgusting until it caps in this, like, to me, what is probably the lowest moment of Kanye's life, which makes sense that it goes into I Love Kanye, where he has to kind of reevaluate himself, and then goes into Waves, where he has to completely confront himself and remember that he loves his wife and that he wants to be different to the people in his lives. Like, Freestyle 4 is the reason all that is able to happen.
Yeah, like narrative wise, it's absolutely like the midpoint turning point or like pivot for the story of Life of Pablo. It's like everything before it builds up to it, and everything that's after is like directly in response to how scary and intense those emotions were on that song.
Yeah.
It's so good. Especially like it took me a while to appreciate it, and what got me really, because at first when I was just listening to the sound of it, I was like, gross, I don't like this, yuck. But and the form serves its function, right? And that's so much of the Life of Pablo, where the songs are done the way that they're done in order to convey the emotion or put you in the mindset that Kanye wants to put you in for the character space, which is why Father Stretch My Hands Part 1 is so happy and bright, and Part 2 is so like ugly. Yeah. And then Famous is so happy and bright, and Feedback's so ugly, because the indulgent things tend to be bright and attractive, where the reality and the realness tends to be a lot uglier. And that's why you get that contrast with Highlights, where it's just like, gee whiz, is it my family great? But then why is he ending the song wanting to fuck these girls at Equinox?
Yeah.
And like, you have that emotion intruding at the end of Highlights leading into Freestyle 4, where it's just like, oh yeah, this is actually the ugliness that's there, that's been under everything. Like, ugh.
Yeah. And I just love it too, because Kanye, to me, The Life of Pablo was the first time we truly had album tracks in that sense, to where, you know, every song on Yeezus, there's only 10 songs, and every song's like, you know, 3 to 4 to 5 minutes long, and goes to all these places. Like, each song is saying a lot of different things throughout and has many different parts. It's pretty rare that we get a song like Freestyle 4 that is only a couple minutes long and conveys one idea. I mean, it's conveying more than one idea, of course, but in terms of the narrative, it's saying like, all right, this song serves this function, so we can move into this song that serves that function. I really love that about Freestyle 4. Is like, it's not a song that you get praise for as a song. You know, it's kind of a brave thing to do, to put out a song like this that is purely in service to the narrative, as opposed to being a song you actually want to listen to. Which maybe doesn't sound like a compliment now that I say it, but it is.
It's cool because so many people, I think, are wanting, like, artists and fans are used to the song being a thing in and of itself, rather than the song being dependent on the context of the rest of the album and just being a scene in and of itself.
Right.
And I think that's kind of the cool, daring thing about Life of Pablo, is that Kanye really went for scenes rather than songs.
Yeah. Although all the songs are great.
They are just atypical.
Yeah. All right, here we are. Number 1 time.
Number 1. And this might not be a surprise to some longtime listeners.
I know it.
Yeah, you know it. Did you know it going in?
I had a feeling. I mean, this is a top 15 song for me, so I'm on board.
Is it even in my top 10?
Let me look at mine. It's pretty high. It's in my top 20. Yeah, The Glory.
It's The Glory. I think The Glory is just as epic as Runaway, Jesus Walks, Blood on the Leaves, what else? Ghost Town, Wolves. Like, it's this monstrous song in a good way, just in the scope and the scale and what it's going for. Like, Kanye has these bars throughout. Like, it's long, it's glorious, and yet I don't see a lot of people bring it up in terms of like their top Kanye songs or even the top songs on Graduation.
Yeah.
It just feels like kind of this huge thing. This and Gone, I think both kind of get lost in the shuffle, but I see people praising Gone more than I see people praising The Glory. And I don't think it necessarily receives the same hate as maybe some of the other tracks that we've talked about, but just the fact that it doesn't receive conversation at all is what bothers me. When I just find it, like, as a song, so beautiful. But in the story of Graduation, where he's just been trying to find the success, for him to finally reach the glory and have this celebratory song, it's wonderful and beautiful, but it's also tragic because we've seen him become so ugly in the songs leading up to it. So it's almost like by the time that he succeeds, are you still rooting for him? Like,
Yeah.
that's difficult. And then even though he's succeeded on this broader scale, like he's become the famous celebrity that he wanted to be on I Wonder. Like he's the champion now. But when he goes back to Chicago on the next song in Good Morning, they don't care because he's no longer the Kanye that they knew and loved, which is the play on Her by Common, right? Where Common talks about this relationship that he had with this girl and that she goes off to Los Angeles and gets caught up in all these things and he doesn't recognize her anymore. But he still loves her, you know? But if anybody doesn't know, he's talking about hip hop. So Kanye made the whole album that journey, but he's her, in quotes. And it's Chicago that is now kind of like, yeah, I still love you, you know, but you can't come back home.
Right. Yeah, I agree with all that. And beyond more than anything, I guess looking at it a little more surface level, like I love the sound of that song so much. Like if I'm running a marathon and it's like the last 400 meters, like I want this song playing in my headphones. It just gets me going like maybe no other Kanye song. Like I could run straight through a brick wall when it's playing.
Yeah, right. It just has that, especially with how like kind of dragging some of the songs before it are. Like
Sure.
Flashing Lights is kind of beautiful, but it's smaller. And Everything I Am is slower. Drunken Hot Girls is slower. Barry Bonds is slower. Can't Tell Me Nothing's slower. To reach the point where you reach on The Glory, it's just so awesome.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's such a perfect transition from like ugly celebrity life where you're kind of lost to coming back to Chicago and not being welcome. Like the ego he's built and the self-confidence he is able to gather from this transition he thinks he's making before he realizes that his behavior has ruined him and ruined his spot in Chicago. Like it's the perfect transition point.
Yeah. And I just can't say enough about the song on the album and what it means to the album and the beauty and the tragedy of it. And then just standing alone as a song, just the bounce, the beat, the flow. It's so good.
And it's got the line, with my ego, I can sit there in a Speedo and be looked at like a fucking hero.
How do people not talk about this song like all the time?
It's like a top 5 Kanye line.
Yeah. Oh, man.
We should do our favorite Kanye lines, by the way.
We should do that. I love, too, just the contrast, and then I'll be done talking about this. The last line is, these haters be killing themselves. They want to come and get the glory. And then it's just 2 albums later on Gorgeous where Kanye's like, I'm coming after whoever who has it. Like, so bored.
Yeah.
Like, you blowing up, that's good. Fantastic. Like, just the difference between how excited he was here and how bored of it he is by the time we get to My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay. And my number 1, going off that, you're talking about Gorgeous. My number 1 comes from My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. And like The Glory, I don't think this one will surprise Chris either. My number 1 is Hell of a Life, which I actually think largely the reason this song's underrated is because it comes out of Runaway. And Runaway is this like majestic, like soaring, otherworldly sound. And then you get something like Hell of a Life, which is invasive and erratic and over the top. I'm actually kind of realizing now that those are the songs I think are most underrated, like Freestyle 4 and Drunken Hot Girls, these seemingly ugly songs that aren't the most welcoming, just like on a sonic level. But when you kind of pour yourselves into them and realize why they sound the way they sound, they open up and reveal the tragedy of them. And to me, in this middle part of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, where Kanye's really disconnected from people, from Runaway, where he's telling this woman to run away from him, to Blame Game, where he's trying to call up this girl and trying to reconnect and he can't. Probably the most damning of any song on that album, with that trajectory of romance, is Hell of a Life, because this whole song is about him seemingly being in love with this porn star, and they're going to go live this life together. And you would think like, oh, he connects with this woman because like they're both outcasts of society. She's not respected by people because she's a porn star. But then by the end of the song, you realize that he's talking to a woman on a screen, and that he's only connecting with her because of who she is, not because he actually has a connection with her, not because he's speaking to her and knows her and loves her. He just kind of like idealizes her and likes the idea of these two outcasts being together, but he can't even be with this woman. And the last moments of the song are him like moaning, and he's clearly, in my mind, masturbating sadly by himself, like with nobody, living this pathetic life. It is just like, wow, like what an insane thing for someone to do on a song. Like to close out listen to take the words I've just said, go listen to the song again, and tell me that's not what's happening in the final moments of that song. What an insane choice for the world's biggest hip hop artist to do. He's not making like radio songs anymore. He's making pieces of art. He's doing stuff like this that belongs in like a fucking museum. That is such a beautiful, insane place to take a song, and it just doesn't get enough love to me.
No, and you have such great lines in it as well. Like the Chain Gang line is fantastic. Like the imagery of him and the porn star like getting married and like honeymoon in the bathroom, like, or honeymoon on a dance floor.
Yeah, they do own a bathroom at some point, I think.
They do. Get married in the bathroom,
Maybe.
Honeymoon on a dance floor. Anyway, divorced by the end of the night. Like, there's just...
Amazing.
Yeah. That song, it just keeps getting better and better to me.
And again, it just sounds incredible.
Mm-hmm. Dun, 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 dun,
yeah.
dun. Yeah.
I'm going to go listen to it now.
Do so, because we've been talking for way too long.
Remember when we said each episode would be 20 minutes?
I seriously thought these would be like 5 to 10 minutes, and like 20 minutes was being generous.
This gets the people going, though.
Does it? Hopefully.
Maybe.
If you enjoyed this episode and you made it this far, we appreciate you. Round
really
of applause
do.
for yourself.
Yeah, seriously. You deserve some kind of award.
Anything else?
No, we'll be back tomorrow for day 6.
All right. Until then,
stay wavy
and loopy.